Woo-hoo-hoo, Cindy Lou here. I am behind the screen. You can't see us right now, but I'm going to be bringing on for the Be Bold You podcast today, Mel Sebastian and Angela Kim, the co-founders of Ability Angels, turning disability into ability. Angela has turned what could have stopped her life into something that helps others to find hope and build lives that are strong and joyful. And she has teamed up with Mel to bring Ability Angels to the world. So let me show you who they are. Ta-da! Here we are. So in case you've never met me before, my name is Cindy Lou. I am the founder of Be Bold You Personality Expression System, where we talk all things personality and we look at how it is we get to define our own lives. We use assessments in order to do that, but we do not let the assessments define us. We get to define who we are. So that is available at Amazon if you want to get the Becoming Bold You book. The show is, of course, sponsored by that book today. You can go ahead and do that. Now that the announcements are out of the way, welcome Angela Kim and Mel Sebastian. I am so excited to have you guys here today, and I would love for each of you to just do a quick intro about who you are and a little bit about what you're doing right now. So Angela Kim, go first, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Cindy Lou. Thank you for having me. And I'm so excited to, be in your podcast and to just speak to your audience. So my name is Angela Kim. I am a traumatic brain injury survivor of over 25 years. So when I was 7 years old, I was a happy and a healthy little girl, who had nothing to fear in her life. There was one day I followed my older brother to a basketball court, and I had this weird sudden urge to climb. I used to love to climb anything and everything I saw. So I saw this towering basket post in front of me, and I decided to climb to the top. So with one arm after another, I reached slowly to the top of the post. And as soon as I got to the top, my hand slipped for a split second, and I landed on the floor, on the concrete. So I landed on my head, so I had a concussion. So then my parents took me to the emergency room, and I immediately went into an 8-hour brain surgery. So then at that point, the doctors had told my parents that if I had come to the hospital 5 minutes later, I could have died. And so I went into an 8-hour brain surgery followed by a coma. And the doctors had told my parents that if I don't wake up within 2 weeks, then I'm probably not going to wake up, and they're going to have to pull the plug on me. But on the 15th day, I miraculously opened my eyes, and I could think I recognized my parents, but no words would come out of my mouth. But worst of all, the entire right side of my body was completely paralyzed from the shoulder all the way down. And so at the age of 7, I had to press the reset button on my life. I had to learn how to talk again, how to walk again. I used to be right-handed. Now my arm was paralyzed. I had to learn how to become left-handed. And I went through thousands of hours of rehabilitation to get to, where I am today. And the doctors had told me a lot of discouraging news where, I'm not going to be able to live anything close to a normal life. And I heard a lot of negative prognosis as I was growing up. But I think in that moment, I decided that I'm going to create my own life. And whatever it looked like, I think I was too little to know what is true or what is not true. So then I decided to kind of just move on. And like your podcast name, I wanted to be bold. So I went out and despite my learning disability and a lot of the challenges that I go through, I graduated from college. I learned how to drive, with just my left arm. I learned how to cook, and now, I'm happily married to my husband, and now I'm, starting my own business with a sense of courage and being bold, kind of like your podcast name. I really love it because that's kind of like the story of my life, taking a bold step every day and living my life to the fullest. That's a little bit about my story.
Yes, thank you so much. And we're going to talk more about that as we go along, of course. And Mel, could you introduce yourself?
Oh, hi, Cindy Lou. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast today. It's a hard act to follow going after Angela when she shares such a profound story. So my story might not be quite as profound, but I'm happy to share a little bit with you all. So I was a special education teacher for 13 years. And after my 13th year, I suppose, my daughter was diagnosed with autism. And it wasn't really a surprise for me, obviously, because I'm a special ed teacher. It's in my alley. But what was a surprise was when I had we went through the 3-month process of having my daughter diagnosed, her psychologist pointed out that I'm autistic as well. And that was a bit of a surprise. And so that sort of threw a spanner in the works for me, because it made me realize all the things that I'd struggled with in my life actually had some sort of a root to them. And, I'd been diagnosed with an anxiety disorder and depression and things like that for a very long time. But I guess even as a special ed teacher for 13 years, my understanding of autism in women was very limited. And so I think that's something that even a lot of psychologists today do have a limited understanding. There are some huge differences. So I actually quit my job and I became a behaviour therapist and studied hypnotherapy as well. And then I met Angela only a month or a couple of months ago, and we just connected and we decided, we both want to do the same thing. We had the same ambitions, that we want to help other people who have been in our shoes, who have struggled with confidence, who have struggled with anxiety, all the things that we've found ways to help ourselves with. We want to give back to the world. And we feel that we are both very similar in our nature, that we're both very kind and caring and gentle, and we create safe spaces. So that's my new passion now, and I'm so blessed to have Angela as my business partner.
Oh my goodness. Okay. First, I want to say every story matters. So, and your story is just as impactful. Like, there are so many moms who are like, all of a sudden they're realizing that their child has Asperger's or some other form of Asperger's is the one I'm familiar with. I have a child who is undiagnosed Asperger's, and the dad, I believe, is the same, both undiagnosed, because they're so high functioning that when they go to the doctors, they know the appropriate way to be and act and interact. So they suck it up and they do that, right? But if you see them in their everyday life and their everyday living, then you start to see the things that are happening there. My son, when he was really little, would just, if I asked him a question, do you want to go to the store with me or do you want to stay home? He would literally stand in the middle of the driveway and just scream, because he could not, functionally make that decision. Mm-hmm. If I would say, I'm going to the store, do you want to come, period, without an and or, he would say yes or no. But if I gave him something to choose between, couldn't do it. Just was not there. And so it was really interesting, because at daycare, they were having all kinds of problems with him. And as I'm sharing this story with you, I'm realizing the reason they were having those problems with him is they kept giving him choices. Mm. Boy, I wish I had that revelation back then, because he wasn't diagnosed by me until years later, right after daycare. And I'm like, we don't have those problems at home, but it's because I had modified how I interacted with him to keep the calm, right? To keep everything. You learn how to interact with children who are autistic. You learn what it is that triggers them, and you avoid those things when you can. So I actually really love your story, and thank you for sharing it.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Cindy Lou. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So normally I ask 10 questions, and I'm going to ask just 5 of my 10 questions, because there's 2 of you. So there'll be 5 each for you guys to answer, so people can get to know you a little bit more. And the first one is, what is your favorite color? Angela?
Yeah, you go, Angela.
I think my favorite color, I would say, is burgundy.
Burgundy. Oh, I love that.
Yeah, so something about burgundy, it's not like a super bright red, but it's not like it's kind of like a mixture of a color, which I kind of associate myself a lot, because I tend to be like a chameleon, or depending on certain context, I tend to kind of show different sides of me. And I think I like the fact that to make a burgundy, you need to mix a certain amount of colors, and burgundy, it brightens my day. I like burgundy.
Nice. And Mel?
Mine's blue. It used to be purple, but now I'm a blue girl. I don't really have a good answer for that, but I guess it just makes me feel bright as well, that I like the color blue.
Oh, purple. How could you?
I did used to love purple. I was obsessed with it, but I've changed.
The brightness of blue, I totally understand that too, for sure. And are you guys book readers?
Yes, I am.
What book are you reading now then, Angela?
I'm reading this book called What Color is Your Parachute? Have you read that book?
Such a good book.
Yeah, it's such a profound book. And it's about, finding yourself, finding your career, finding who you are and how you can contribute to the world. So I'm very fascinated by it.
And Mel?
I'm actually rereading, because it's very important for me in this part of my life to reread Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now. I've been going through quite a lot lately with my mum not being well, so it's been very helpful reading that book again. It's one that I dig out every now and then. It's good to reread.
Yeah, another great book. Hello. So if anybody's looking for a couple of great books, those are both amazing. Yeah. And who has had the most influence in your life, and they can be dead or alive?
I think for me, I would say it's my older brother. And my older brother was actually the person who was supposed to watch over me when I had my injury. And I think for quite a while, I had this kind of upset feeling against him, even though it wasn't his fault. He was only 10 years old and I was 7. And I think, I needed something to kind of blame or something to kind of let out my frustration, living with a disability. But I think growing up, having an older brother who is so spiritual and he's so faithful, and he has always kind of, took on me and supported me, both emotionally and financially, and just a lot of support. I would say he's kind of like my rock and my foundation. So I would definitely say my older brother.
I love that. That's amazing how you transitioned. I want to ask you more about that later. So Mel?
I would have to say for me, it's my late grandpa. Growing up, my grandpa was always sort of the best role model for all of us. He was such a kind and patient, loving and caring man, so intelligent and always such a great storyteller, and so invested in all of I've got 3 siblings, and so invested in our education, and even though he was quite older than us, still so relevant, the advice that he would give us. And so I would say that he's been my greatest role model that I look up to the most.
There is nothing quite like a grandpa. Isn't. What is the most exotic place you've ever visited?
Exotic place I've ever visited. I think I would say I actually used to live in Australia and also Brazil when I was younger. So I don't have a lot of memories of that, but especially when I was young, prior to my injury, I don't have a lot of memories of it. But I do have a lot of memories pictures with kangaroos and koalas. So I'm from Australia. So I would say that even though I don't quite remember it clearly, I would say that would be one of my exotic places that I've been.
And Mel?
Mine would be Boracay in the Philippines. So my husband's Filipino, and his dad and his grandparents and a lot of his aunties and uncles still live in the Philippines. So before we had our daughter, we went to the Philippines and visited all of his family, which was beautiful, and went to Boracay for a little holiday. That's probably the most exotic place I've been to.
And we're actually doing really good with time, so I might ask you a couple more. What has been your favorite age?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I would say my favorite age is when I turned 30. I think I'm 32 right now. I think when I turned 30, something changed inside of me. And I think, once the first number of your, the decade changes to a different number, I think that's when I really kind of started to step into who I really am and not really care about what other people think or how I should be living, but more doing a lot of introspective work into who am I really and what am I made to do in this world. So I would say, 30 has been a very transformative year. So I would say that's one of my favorite age.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think. I've got two answers floating in my head. I'm not sure which one to pick. I'm thinking this year has been amazing.
Share them both.
Okay, so I suppose this year I feel like I'm finally stepping into where I should be. So I feel like this is a really transformational year for me as well. But when I look on my whole life, I do go back to when I was 10. And when I was 10, we moved out. We were living in, a lot of your listeners aren't Australian, so it's hard. I don't want to be too specific. But we were living in a fairly busy area, and we moved out into the country for a year. And obviously I had no idea I was autistic, and I didn't even know what anxiety was, neither did my parents. But moving out to the country just for a year, I have these memories of riding my bike around the town that was so empty, which I say with a big smile on my face because I hate crowds, and just feeling so free. And there was this beautiful little, it's called The Brush. We were living in Wingham, which is a country town, and this beautiful little, kind of like a little rainforest area that you could go through. And I was like a free range kid. And so when I think about when I was 10, that 1 year, and the tiny school with, maybe 12 kids in the class compared to 30. That to me, I just remember feeling so free living out there.
That sounds amazing. And let's actually go to that question. So you're in Australia, Mel?
Yes. Yeah.
And Angela, you're in
Southern California.
Southern California, and I'm in New Zealand.
Oh.
Some of my listeners are New Zealanders, and they know exactly what you're talking about. So they probably live there, some of them. So, yeah, definitely. So, yeah, cool. I love that. Okay, makes me want to go there now. Put it on my list. This is why I asked where you've gone for exotic places, and because I want to make sure I put them on my list. But
very clever.
The exotic place, but it sounds amazing with the bush and rainforest. Hello. Which half of New Zealand, actually, when you get into the West Coast, is pretty much that. But
I don't actually think it's a rainforest. I'm actually making that bit up. I'm not sure what you'd call it. My geography is so bad.
Don't tell anybody.
It's not a rainforest.
Not a rainforest, but it's got forest in it. Yes. Country. And who knows what it looks like now, because you're now years later and things change. Unless you've been back recently, you wouldn't even know.
We actually did go back. We took my daughter there, and it was just beautiful. Love it.
Did you move there?
Oh, it's only no. We just went back for a visit. It's only 2 hours. About a 2 or 3 hour drive from where we currently live.
Holiday place then.
Yeah, it was lovely.
Nice. And are you more introverted or extroverted?
I think as I'm getting older, I'm realizing I'm a little bit more extroverted than I thought I was. And I think I'm just getting more comfortable with my own skin. And I love being with people, and I love being connected to people. And I think that's something that I really longed, as I was growing up, because I felt so disconnected with the world, with all the things that I'm going through. But I think I am pushing myself and stretching myself to become a little bit more extroverted. And as I'm doing so, I'm getting more comfortable in my own skin. So I would say so.
Awesome. And Mel?
Oh, wow. I'd like to echo what Angela said, but I might not be quite as extroverted yet. I'm definitely introverted, and I am pushing myself a little bit more and more, a lot more lately. This is my first podcast that I've been on. I said that to Cindy Lou when we jumped on. I'm like, that's my first one. It's exciting. So yes, I'm starting to get a tiny bit more extroverted.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm 50-50 pretty much, or not quite 50-50. I'm like 60% introverted and 40%. I mean, 60% extroverted and 40% introverted. If I don't have a balance of both, I go a little bit nuts.
Yeah.
So, and I think we're all that way. It's just some people are 20% introverted and 80% extrovert, so everybody's got both in them. What energizes you?
Oh, this is I would say my niece and my nephew. So my husband and I, we don't have kids of our own, but my niece and nephew, my niece is 3 years old and my nephew is he's just 4 months now. And I think they are like the joy of my life. And just watching them grow is such an amazing thing. And even though I'm not their parent, it fascinates me how much kids pick up language, and they energize me so much, and they bring me so much joy. So I love them to pieces.
That sounds so fun. I want to meet them now because you have so much joy about them.
Yeah. Dude.
And Mel?
Yeah, I'd say my daughter and my husband, but also just being outside. I just need to be outside, and I find we've got very typical Australian family. We've got chickens in the backyard and a couple of dogs, and so animals and being outside, that really energizes me.
Outside by yourself?
Oh, well, usually when my daughter's out there, it's all woo, so that probably energizes me more. It's nice to have a cup of tea by yourself outside.
What was that?
I said it's nice to go outside and have a cup of tea on your own, but yeah, it doesn't always happen.
Yes, if you had the choice, you would probably choose that over the other. That's that introverted piece of you showing up a little bit. It's just let me go. Okay, the last question is, what one word describes you best?
What one word describes me best? I would say resilient. I think I have grown my resiliency muscle for so long, and it's kind of, when life throws curveballs at you, which, it does quite a lot of times, I have learned to fall down and pick myself back up. It's, if life knocks you down 7 times, what do? You get back up the 8th time. So I would say resilient is one of my words that describe me.
I would agree. And Mel?
Oh, that's beautiful, Angela. The word that's coming to my mind is care. That's my biggest thing. Even when I was little, my little brother's 9 years younger than me, and he's autistic as well. And so I just love people. I love caring for people. I think that's why I was drawn into special education for so long and what I'm doing now.
That is awesome. Now, what was it that Angela said I wanted to come back around to? Oh, your brother?
Yeah.
Her brother, right? Mm-hmm. Your brother being. So that actually ties into I ask all of my guests, like, what is the one question that if I could only ask you one question, what would you want that to be? And yours was, would you choose your life again if you had the choice?
Mm-hmm.
I would love for you to talk about that, and also talk about your brother's, input into that, and kind of how he and you have come back together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because that's what it sounds like has happened.
Yeah, it definitely did. So, to be honest, I think for a really long time, I actually couldn't answer this question right. And I said, of course, if I had the choice, I would want to have gone through a traumatic brain injury or the trauma that I have gone through. But I think over the years, I have really come to appreciate what a different side of life and a different perspective of life, living with the person, as a person with a disability. I think I've just come to appreciate life more and more. And this ties back to, my relationship with my brother. And it also includes my parents too, where it was in the beginning, it was very rocky, and it was a lot of resentment. And, it's mainly for me because I needed to have an outlet to figure out why this happened, right? The purpose behind all this tragedy. And I think I just put up a barrier and a wall, for me connecting with my family. But I think it was actually pretty recent, a couple months ago. my brother was on the wait list for a Clubhouse, and I invited him in, and I think he was just kind of exploring the platform, and we were in a room together, and we were talking about a lot of healing and a lot of love, and my brother was in the room. I actually shouted it. I did a little shout out for him, and I said, actually my brother's in the audience, and I wanted to share something that I really never did, never did to him personally, let alone never do to the in front of other people. And I really kind of opened up, and something I think like a spirit was tugging my heart and saying that it's about time that I kind of share this with my brother, how I really feel about him. And I did share it, and I think that was it was almost like a Holy Spirit kind of moment where we kind of like came together and said, and my brother, I shared to him how much I appreciated him and how much I'm grateful for all that he sacrificed for me and for my family and things. And I think that moment, there was so much of a healing that just overwhelmed both of our beings. And in that moment, we really realized that, my brother realized that I appreciated him and I acknowledged him, and I was sorry for all like the brattiness that his little sister had carried on for so long. And I think in that moment, right now, I would say my brother is like my rock and he's my foundation. And I think that moment was such a beautiful moment for the both of us. Went through a lot of healing. So I would say that was a very special kind of moment.
Awesome. And I'm going to actually bring Mel up and ask you too, because you also mentioned your brother and caring for your brother and how that impacted you. So can you kind of answer, not necessarily the question that Angela gave us, but just kind of how that impacted you and how that kind of set you up for what you're doing now?
Yeah, well, I suppose, so my little brother only had a late diagnosis as well. He was only diagnosed with autism when he was in his 20s. So it was quite funny when I went to see my mum and my little brother. So my mum's my little brother's carer. And I said to them, oh, my daughter's psychologist thinks I'm autistic. Do you think I could be? And they're like, yes. Finally, you realize. It's funny. But growing up, having him 9 years younger than myself, that did, I think it did shape my personality in a little bit, in a way, because I think because we were both on the spectrum and my two other siblings weren't, I think I could understand him a lot more. And so that's why he was probably a lot closer with me when we were growing up, and I took him under my wing a lot. My husband, we met when we were in high school, and he remembers, an 18-year-old me going to like friends, not huge parties, just little tiny gatherings with other friends our age, and I'd bring my little brother along with me because he'd just want to come out, and I'm like, yeah, you can come along, like not late at night. This sounds really awful, actually. It's not like that at all. It's just like casual catch-ups. But he remembers saying to me, I remember my husband saying to me how he thought it was so beautiful, the relationship I had with my little brother, that I'd bring him along with me to all these different places, and that he was always under my wing, even when there was that huge gap. Most 18-year-old girls are out partying and doing stuff, and I'm like going around to friends' houses with my little brother and taking him to the beach and doing stuff like that. We have a really special relationship. I think we understand each other so much more than what I think a lot of other people do understand us. So, yeah. Oh, I think you're muted still, Cindy Lee.
Yeah. And Angela, do you have any thoughts that you want to just share based on what Mel just said? If you guys during this time have something that comes up from what the other one says, please just feel free to kind of jump in. Pretend we're in Clubhouse and jump on in.
Yeah. And I think I kind of agree with Mel and how my older brother, now that I look back on it, he, I think as an older sibling, they do feel this sense of responsibility to take care of their younger ones. And I think my brother especially had this overprotective sense over me and said, like he wanted to make sure that I'm not getting teased by my friends, and, we have a little bit of an age gap, not too much, but he wanted to make sure that I'm okay. And I think even though I think the gender difference makes it a little bit hard because, he's not a sister, and, it's hard to relate so much. But I think just having an older brother, it kind of for me, it was almost like a protective kind of shield, right? And I was kind of under his wings, I guess, and saying that, if anything happens, I can go to my older brother and he can kind of stand up for me and things like that. So I think both consciously and subconsciously, he gave me a lot of strength. And I didn't realize it back then, but I do realize it now. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Definitely. Our families give us a whole lot more than we give them credit for in our own minds until we're into our 30s, I think. And then we start to realize just how precious those years were sharing them with others, even when they weren't perfect.
Right.
So true. So they teach us so much.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk a little bit now. I'm going to kind of shift a little bit. And I want to talk about what are you doing now? And you guys have come together. So I met Angela in a room, and it may have been the same room because she may have been sharing her story that Mel was an audience member of. And we're listening to Angela's story because it sounds around the same time. So I have a feeling it could have been the same room that we were all in on Clubhouse. And although Mel didn't come up, she connected with Angela through direct messaging, and they started talking. And I booked Angela on here because I was like, I've got to have you on. I got to have you share your story. And now your story has grown to include Mel and what you guys are doing now with the Disability Ability Angels, or the Ability Angels. What are you calling it again? Mm-hmm. The Ability Angels.
Yes.
And so tell me how did that come to be? And either of you can start first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, so when I heard Angela's story, like you were saying, Cindy Lou, I was just blown away. And I just wanted to reach out to her just to thank her for sharing that and blessing the audience with her story. It was so inspiring. And I had no sort of anticipation that we were going to even connect or on a different level. But Angela's like, oh, jump on Zoom the next day. Let's have a meeting and just meet and chat. And so then we just sort of formed this friendship where we were helping each other because we both had these strong ambitions to have our own business and do pretty much the same thing. We wanted to help people with disabilities to learn to find their confidence and their voice and step out of that feeling of being trapped by, the different struggles that come along with that. And so we were sort of just buddies for a while, and then we decided, no, we should do this together. Why aren't we doing it together? It makes sense. And so we actually spent ages trying to come up with our name, which is Ability Angels. And I remember the day we came up with that, Angela. We were on a Zoom session for like over an hour, and we couldn't decide on a name. And I said, let's just open up a Clubhouse room, and we called it Help Angela and Mel Name Their New Business.
I love Clubhouse.
It's so funny. And we were laughing. We thought, we're going to open this room and it will just be the two of us in the room with nobody coming in, because who's going to join that room? Like, it sounds really weird. But within a couple of seconds, we didn't even get time to talk about, how we're going to manage this or whatnot. Within probably 3 seconds, we just were flooded with people. Yeah. Like, I think we had almost maybe 30 people at the most at one point, I think. Yeah, it was full on. And everyone just joined, and they were all like, tell us about your business. We'll help you name it. And it was beautiful. So our name, we didn't actually come up with it. We can't claim credit for that. Clubhouse came up with the amazing people on Clubhouse. So I think it was Kerry that came up with the angels part. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to remember who came up with the ability part.
I think she came up with both the names.
Oh, she did.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. Yeah. Kerry came up with both of them. Mm-hmm. So I think someone had said something about, what about like, using the word ability, and then Kerry came up with, let's put them together and have ability angels, and it was beautiful, like amazing. Sorry, Angela, you can chat now.
So I think it's this idea where when things are meant to be, like the stars align. Right. And yes. Like Mel and I were like oceans apart, like literally oceans apart, like across the globe. Right. And we met this act together. And I think when we have a purpose and a calling that's bigger than ourselves, and when we're meant to do something, like the stars and the universe conspires itself to kind of open doors, right? And I think our work together right now is so seamless. Like so many things are falling into place, and people are just coming into kind of our doors and saying, "Oh, this is an opportunity for you," And every room, everybody that we share our mission and know what we try to do, there's so much support, and I think just that affirmation, it helps us realize that there is a need for this community, and especially for women who either struggle with a disability or who's a mother who has a child with a disability. It's a lonely journey and it's a lonely battle. We're constantly feel like we're going against something. And I think when we build a community of ability angels who can share, who can grow wings together, right, and who can lean on each other and support each other, and this thing called life, right? I think it's such a beautiful kind of journey if we can do it together and share our burdens. That's our mission, and that's what we're trying to create.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Have you found working with somebody and doing something together rather than trying to figure it all out and do it all on your own easier?
Absolutely. Like I would say 5,000% easier.
Right?
Yeah.
I think though, if I was working with someone who wasn't on my level and didn't have the understanding of how my brain works, I would probably say no. I'd say I'd much rather do all of it on my own. But for some reason, Angela and I, we just click, and we literally finish each other's sentences. We'll be working on a shared Word document together, and I'll be like, da, 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 and I'm like, oh, how do I end that? And she's like, da, 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 da. And then it's like we really are on the same page.
Yeah.
And I think we have a lot of similarities. Angela has ADHD, and since I've been working with Angela, I'm starting to think I do too, because we both are really similar, and so we're quite forgiving and understanding of each other as well. When we do sort of tangent, we have this mission, okay, we're going to get this done today, and then we go on this massive tangent. It ends up spending 3 hours doing something else, but it's still productive. Yeah.
And I think, especially when it comes to values, right? When we're partnering with somebody, trying to have a business together, we need to not only have the same mission and the vision, but we got to share similar values, right? Like, what are we standing up for as values within ourselves and values as a company, right? And I think so much of that we still align in almost like perfect synchrony, which is, it kind of amazes me and surprises me every day. And I'm like, wait, is this really happening, or is this just a dream, right? I think I find myself kind of wondering that. I'm like, what if I wake up tomorrow and this is all like a big dream, right? But I think every day, we have like a message going on back and forth, and I'm like, oh, Mel, I had that idea. And then she immediately texts us back and she said, oh, I was just thinking the same thing, right? And I'm like, well, we're like oceans apart, but how are we having the same image and the same vision, which is very surprising, and I love it. I love it so much.
I think that's how you know that you're called to work together.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
I mean, you guys are like the ultimate in collaboration. Collaboration is my thing. Like, not competition, let's collaborate. And if that collaboration is referrals, like, let me check out these people that are looking for the same service that I have. But if they don't quite fit, or it doesn't quite feel right, find somebody else that does the exact same thing you do, and send that person to them that you would trust, right? That you would maybe not want to work with because their personality is a little bit different, or they interact with people differently. But the person that you're talking to, you're kind of like listening to them, and you're like, well, they sound a lot like this other person who does the same thing I do. Let me just transfer this person over to, them and refer them out. It's amazing. So Ability Angels, tell me more about that, because here's how I found out about Ability Angels. I get ready for the show by going usually about a week before and looking through I ask all of my guests, what do you want me to look at before the show? And I start looking at that and putting together the promo. And I get to look at your site, Angela, and there was nothing there because you've shifted your focus, because at that time you thought you'd have your site done by then. So you'd given me that address. But I found the Ability Angels on your through your Facebook, and there it was. And I was like, oh, what's she got going on here? shift to this because that's what, the power of now. This is what's happening now.
Mhm.
And who you're becoming is this person who is starting this endeavor. Now, so I'm super excited to share that with the world and to share Ability Angels and to be the first podcast that you guys are on together. It's going to be the first of many. I'm sure your story will be told again and again and again. And we need to get that story out to the world. So I'm so grateful that you're here with us today to do that. Who is Ability Angels for?
Mhm. I think the term ability angels, we're trying to reframe this idea of going from disability into ability, right? And I think, no matter what kind of disability or chronic illness somebody has, we tend to focus on the this part, right? And we tend to focus on what we can't do and are lacking. And somehow that we're different, we're less than, we're not good enough. And I think our society, unfortunately, has pictured us and molded us into somebody that, we're actually lesser. We're lower on the social ladder. We're lower on the power ladder or whatnot. I think Mel and I are trying to create this movement of people stepping into themselves and finding out their own strength, right? Because everybody has a talent and a gift, whether or not what kind of disability they have, right? Like I have a traumatic brain injury. Someone might be, have cerebral palsy, or someone might have a hard of hearing, or they have different limitations, but they also have strengths. And I think when we focus on our strengths and when we focus on our abilities, we can really grow our wings and overcome and compensate for the limitations that are perceiving, because they're not really limitations until we believe they are limitations, right? So I think a lot of our work is working on our mental health and changing our shift of focus and our mindset to focus on what is possible and really getting to the root of it and believing in our core and who we're meant to be. Right? If we know that we are meant to do more and be more in this world, we can easily step into that identity. So we're trying to reframe a lot of the identity and the misidentity that people have around, the world disability. That's kind of our mission.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up like even disease, right? If people are having some disease that is, we focus on the dis, not the ease. And there is an ease that comes when you look at not what you can't do, but what can I do?
Yeah.
And how do I know this? I had a pacemaker added to my life in 2014. So I had to look at what can I do? There were a lot of things I couldn't do anymore, but what can I do? And since then, I've written two books plus four or five journals, and I'm working on the journal series of the Fruits of the Spirit. So I'm kind of, I'm doing a lot of writing, a lot more sitting. Now I'm starting to be able to move a little bit more again, finally. But we do often focus on what we can't do rather than looking at what can we do.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think it's important to acknowledge when someone has a disability. The word disability is not a bad word, but it is really important to acknowledge that there are limitations and there are accommodations that we need, and to acknowledge that and accept it from a place of love and kindness, where you're actually kind to yourself and you say, you know what, today I can't do this, and that's okay. I'm not going to push myself. I'm just going to be kind to myself. There are other ways and other days where I can push myself more, but I think that's really important as well. And that just takes away that feeling of shame. And for me, that's been the biggest thing in the last couple of years, since I've sort of understood why I am the way I am. I now stop feeling like I'm just, excuse the word, but I grew up just thinking I was a stupid weirdo. And perhaps I am. No, I'm joking. But to be able to understand it and say, you know what, that's okay. I struggle with this. Other people might not struggle with that, and that's okay. I accept that. But what I can do is this, and I'm going to focus on that, and I'm going to push myself in the way that drives me and makes me happy and fulfills meaning in my life. I think that's it. We don't want to make people feel like, don't worry about all the things you can't do. It's like, no, we're gonna say, accept that, learn to accept it from a place of loving kindness from your heart, and then we move on. And I think that's something that a lot of people with disability or chronic illness they might struggle with that.
Yeah, for sure. Where what are you doing with Ability Angels? Like, I know there's a Facebook group. Is that a free group? Is that a paid group? A free group called Ability.
Yeah.
So folks can look that up on Facebook, Ability Angels, and you will find it.
We have the.
Sorry. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, we have the free group Ability Angels, and we'd encourage everyone to join that. And then through that group, we're going to be advertising different workshops that Angela and I will be co-hosting, and they'll be on different themes that are relevant to our audience. So we'll be asking, for feedback. For instance, the first one that we're thinking of doing is around anxiety, which is something that both Angela and I have suffered from our whole lives. And so that will be a really big theme, I think, for a lot of people, and building confidence and resilience. And there might be more specific things that we'll get feedback from our tribe, so to speak, as to what we will focus on. Like, some of it could be around getting a job. So if for some people that job interview can be the barrier. So building skills for people with disabilities that are specific to what they need. But so it will grow and change, but at the moment that's our mission.
Oh, I think you're muted.
She's so good. I think you're muted. I think I heard that was typing. Otherwise, it's typing somewhere else. So there's a Facebook page too. So if people go to facebook.com/AbilityAngels1, they're going to be able to find your Facebook page, and from there you'll find the group that's attached to it. So absolutely. Do people need prerequisites to join your group, or do they need to be referred or anything like that?
No, and we accept self-diagnosis. So a lot of people can't afford to get a diagnosis, have a formal diagnosis. My daughter does, and her psychologist, who spent 3 months with me diagnosing my daughter, has pretty much given me an informal diagnosis. A lot of people don't have diagnoses, and they know that they've got struggles, but they don't go to that next step of getting a diagnosis. So you don't need to have a diagnosis to come to our group. You could just have a hunch that there's just something that you're struggling with, that there might be people like us who can help you. There are so many women that I've met on Clubhouse that say, I'm pretty sure I'm ADHD. and they're like, and I don't know what to do about it. And so you don't to anyone, regardless of diagnosis, and even if it's chronic illness and different struggles like that as well, it's just a safe space where we can come and talk about issues that are relevant to us.
Yeah.
So can folks who don't necessarily have a disability, come and be a part of the group too? Because I have a feeling that a lot of what you're sharing, I have a feeling a lot of what you're sharing can help like everybody.
Yes,
Simply, you think about how many people have been struggling with anxiety since COVID. Like, it's anxiety disorder is a disability, and you don't need to have a formal diagnosis of that to experience anxiety to that extreme. And so you think about the amount of people in the world right now that are inundated with anxiety and depression. It's good to reach out and get help. And we're not psychologists. Well, actually, Angela has a psychology degree. I'm a special education background, but we're not clinical psychologists. So we're not providing that sort of support. What we are providing is just a community of like-minded people with myself and Angela who have overcome struggles, and we want to help other people using some of the methods that have helped us. So we both use different things. A lot of them there's a lot of parallels in what Angela and I do. And so together we bring two different perspectives and two different sort of ways of how we can help other people. So that's sort of the basic.
Yeah. And I think especially for people who go through mental health or disability related challenges, they realize that a lot of resources out there are not really geared towards them. And they don't really understand the emotional and the psychological turmoil and the distress that happens, because oftentimes it's a mental block and it's a lack of self-esteem, saying that, well, that can work for them, but it's not going to work for me. And I think oftentimes we put ourselves at the blocks. We ourselves are our biggest enemy. And when we realize that other people actually go through similar things, and other these are the ways that other people have overcome this, right? And find strategies and tools that really work, right? And work for our specific population. Because oftentimes I realize not all strategies out there work for people like me and people like Mel or people with, disability related issues, right? And I think we're trying to pick out the things that really work for us and that really have transformed our mindset and our lives to help us, kind of go after and even give us the permission to dream, right? And I think oftentimes it's a lot of emotional and mental blocks that we need to have breakdowns in order to have breakthroughs. And I think, Mel and I have gone through a number of breakdowns and breakthroughs in our lives that we know what it feels like to be in their shoes. And we have such a big heart to want to help people come out to the other side of the tunnel, because there is a light at the end of the tunnel if we're looking for it. So anybody is welcome to join our community, and we're just happy to serve.
Yes. Yeah.
But
I think
Okay.
about how many times I've been to different psychologists in my life, and psychology has its place. It's definitely helped me. But I can remember times where I've had a highly confident, outgoing psychologist trying to give me advice about anxiety. I'm like, you've never experienced this. You have no idea what you're talking about. Try standing in a shopping centre and just having complete panic attack and no control. You've never experienced that. You've read about it in a book, and it's very different.
Here's the things to tell your patient.
Here's the formula.
I've never had to figure out, do I walk away from the cart and leave the ice cream melting? Do I go put all of the pieces back in the freezer that I know are going to melt so that the store doesn't have to deal with it? Or do I just sit here and cry until somebody comes along and says, can I help you? Right? Hopefully your mother walks around the corner and says, honey, let me just get you out. So, yeah. Anxiety happens for many different reasons. And you're absolutely right. Right now with COVID and everything that's happening globally, the pandemic, there's a lot. There's a lot. People can't travel. People cannot be with their family and friends. What a great way to be able to connect with other people and have some support systems in place that are conversational, that are supportive, that care, and that are going to lift you up and bring you some joy in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think another big thing going on these days is depression, right? Whether or not what I think depression is also a spectrum, right? There's a whole wide spectrum of depression. I've been there. I've been suicidal like a number of times where I didn't find hope at all. And I've been on the other side, like the very dark side of depression. And also some small bouts of depression kind of here and there that kind of, it's like a wave. It comes and goes, right?
Yes.
And I think when we are in that space of kind of recognizing that, my mood is actually not really stable and that I'm actually feeling down a lot, right? It takes one person to really say, I believe in you and that you matter, right? And it comes from someone who really cares about that person because they've been there and they know exactly how that feels. That person can change a person's life, right? And oftentimes unfortunately, it's actually not our family or our close friends either, because they want the best for us, but not all the time, but sometimes they don't really understand what we're going through. And people also have a hard time opening up to their family because they don't want to burden them. They don't want to hurt them. They don't want to break their hearts, right? So it's sometimes easier for us to find an outside community who really can understand and support almost wholeheartedly. So that really makes a difference.
Hmm.
Yeah. And at a time where we can't get together as
Yeah,
easily. How blessed
absolutely.
are we to have online, and how blessed are we to have, different formats, whether you're on Facebook or whether now, are you guys doing rooms on Clubhouse together since you're
Yes.
all
Yes.
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, we've had
So
some big rooms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're loving it. So, yeah, we have applied for a club, but like everybody well, not everybody, but a lot of people who are on Clubhouse, they know that it's taking a long time to get your actual clubs approved.
did you hear the news? They're hoping to roll that out this week to where you can do your own within
Oh, yay,
So
breaking
good.
news. That's awesome.
hopefully that was announced this morning. And so hopefully by the end of the week, we will be able to
Yeah.
just create those clubs that we've applied for that haven't been yet put through.
Oh,
We'll be able to do
Oh,
that.
so good.
So
we've just been
yeah,
opening up rooms and just,
yeah, which
some
is
of that.
exactly. So you did the exact same thing in Clubhouse that you're talking about doing in life. What can we do?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
I don't have this club. I can't get this club, but what can we do?
Yep.
Right?
Yes.
And you're doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And start
Yeah.
reaching out, start becoming, start stepping into all of your dreams. This is what Ability Angels sounds like it's for me, what I'm hearing you say is it's now time for you to start stepping into your dreams. It's
Mm-hmm.
time for you to give yourself permission to have those dreams. And we're going to stand with you as Ability Angels and say, we're here to walk with you through whatever you need.
Mm-hmm.
And if you need professional help, we're going to advise you to go get that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
But
definitely.
non-professional help and just somebody holding your hand as you're sitting,
Mm,
going through it, Ability Angels is there for you.
Mm-hmm.
that's
Do either of
right.
you have any last statements you'd like to do? Because we're almost at the hour. It goes
Mhm.
quickly here, and it's
Oh,
always
just-
fun, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to thank you, Cindy Lou, for having us on your podcast, and for my first podcast as well. Your energy, the way that you host, is just so calm and relaxing. For someone like me, who I won't lie, I was very nervous before I jumped on. But sitting here for an hour with you, I just feel like I've been having a chat with an old friend. And
Yeah.
I want to really take that time to acknowledge you and how beautiful this podcast is that you've created. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And Angela, and you're welcome.
Yeah, so I wanted to echo Mel and say, thank you for, allowing us to be here and just your podcast and the community that you have created, Cindy Lou. I think it's such a beautiful one, and it's such a one that's needed because it's about empowering, right? And it's about being ourselves and being bold and not being ashamed of it, right? And I think just your presence and your energy and all the words and all the welcoming, the remarks that you give us, I feel like we've been just having a fun conversation, and I can't believe that it's been almost an hour already. It's just crazy. Yeah. And I think a last word that I wanted to share with the audience is there's this quote that I really like. It's life is the C between B and D, which means life is the choice that we make between birth and death. Right? And I think every moment is a choice. And every identity that we either step into or not step into, that's also a choice. So if we really believe that we're meant for more, and that we believe that, I do have an ability and I am special. And once we kind of step into that, it's a matter of a single decision and a single choice that can really change the course of our lives. And even though, things happen in life, we don't get to choose the cards that we're dealt with, right? But we get to choose the hand that we play. And I think that's something that really I want to all of your audience to know that, being bold is a choice. And it's a beautiful choice, and it's an amazing choice. Because once we step into that, so many doors open, and the universe is waiting for us to be bold and to be bold you. Right. So I love that. So thank you for having us, Cindy Lou. Really
Oh my gosh.
appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I am honored, Mel, that this was the first one that you've done, and I'm glad that you enjoyed it. I also am just so grateful to have you, Angela, and I'm so glad you guys started this together before the podcast so that we could bring this to the world and really release it to the world. And wow. Whew. And yeah, the Becoming Bold You Club on Clubhouse is going really well. I have over 300 followers and members now, and that's a month, right? Like when you find your people, you find your people. If you don't love assessments and you don't love introspection and you don't love exploring what can I do in the world, then my group is not for you. But if you love all of those things, then come over and you're on Clubhouse, come on over and find me on Clubhouse. I'll probably start some kind of a membership here on Facebook eventually, but right now I'm focusing on there and kind of getting all of the pieces together and figuring out what we're doing. We talk about a different assessment every Saturday. It is so much fun to learn about all of the different ones. And I thought before that I had to become the expert, and this kind of ties into what you guys are doing, right? We don't have to be the expert in everything that we want to share about life. We can come at it from the point of view that we have. So I now realize, after being on Clubhouse for a few months, that I see personalities and Becoming Bold You as the overview, as a 30,000 foot level. I can see all of the different fields that you can play in. You can play in the Enneagram field. You can play in the Myers-Briggs, MBTI, they call it now, the DISC one, the Be Bold You. I have my own because I can never remember the sanguine, the phlegmatic, the whatever, and which one is which. And so I created it in today's language. I have the brazen, the origami, the lightning, and the devoted. And immediately you get a picture of each of those, right? Brazen, strong. Origami is super detailed. Lightning could be all over the place, but they light up the world, right? And they make a lot of noise. And then the devoted, who are just there to wrap you up. So that is the four kind of behavior types in the basic four that have been talked about since BC. So that is what we do. Yeah, it's so fun.
That was an amazing quiz. I think I got the devoted. What did you get, Angela?
I did too.
You got the devoted as well. Oh,
yeah.
Which plays right into what you guys are doing.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
You're caring for people, you're wrapping them up, you're embracing them, and you're making sure that their life journey is easier, which is all devoted kind of behaviors, which we love and adore, and we thank you. So to all my listeners who are listening, you know what I say at the end of every week, and if you've never listened before, you don't know it, but here it is. Remember to always live your life out loud and be bold you. Till next week, we shall see you.